Greetings, class. I'm Dr. Tyson McMillan, your humble teacher for this course, Introduction to Python. In this course, we explore so many opportunities as it relates to Python. Python is a multi-purpose language, and in particular, a major language behind AI today. So let's take a moment to explore Python 101, an overview of many concepts we're going to be covering in this course using Google Colabs as the IDE, the tool of development behind the scenes. Let's call this lesson plan Python 101 with Dr. T as I guide you step by step through these processes. I'm going to share my screen and bring it to you as I also am working through some of the early things you're going to be doing in the course. You're going to need to be able to log on to Google Colabs with your personal Gmail account, school Gmail account, any Gmail account that you're able to log on to Google with. And so I'm going to begin that process of authentication myself here live. And as you know, sometimes that takes a little bit of work, but okay, I'm in and authenticated. It knows who I am. And so throughout this course, you're going to need to make a new Google Colab notebook. I'm going to do that here. The notebook is our workspace. It's the place where we can run code. It's the place where we can document code. It's the place where we're going to be doing all the work of this course. And so as we work through this, and as you've authenticated in on your Google account, let us, through the miracle of computing, work on adding some elements that are going to be necessary for the work that we do here in the course. Google Gemini, you'll be there on the side doing your thing, but let us use the human element. I'm going to ask you in several places in the assignments to, once you log on to Colabs, give the project a specific name. Renaming the notebook is going to help you keep track of the so many different projects you're going to be doing throughout this course. And so notice that Colabs have that PYNB extension. Keep that on there. But we call it Python 101, your last name, and then you can kind of work through the process of naming it accordingly. So in my instance, Tyson McMillan, Dr. T. So that is the name of the project. Oftentimes, we as programmers need to document our work. And so symbolically, I'm asking you to document your work here by adding some text blocks. And so if you click on this plus sign here, it's going to add a text block that you can begin implementing some of these kind of basic elements I'm asking you to do. You want to document every one of these projects that you're doing in this class by you double click in there and you paste these details in here. So this is Introduction to Scripting. This is our Python 101 overview. You can edit these generic blocks in here to have your information accordingly. This is more informational and for documentation purposes. It's not really about running code, but documenting your code. And just put as many details as you can about the assignment, about the date that you're doing the work, all those elements in here for documentation purposes. That's what we call a text block in this system. I'm going to click out of that and you can see that it's just documenting some details about the project itself here. The code blocks, excuse me, are where we're going to be doing the real work of running the Python code itself. So the code block is where we'll be doing some code here in a little bit. But I'm going to ask you also to do some reflection. So be prepared to add a text block here that also relates to reflection in the various assignments in this course. And so, for instance, I'm going to double click to get in there, double click, and we say, you know what, I'm going to add some details about what I already know about Python programming. You put your details there. Have I used coding before? You put your details there as an example response. What do I hope to learn in this course? You would put your details there. And so learning reflection may be in an initial section that you put in just for your notes, just for your purposes. And note that I can move these up or down with that arrow. So I have the overview of the assignment. I have the learning reflection initial. And then why not put a section in here for your own notes as the best practice in this course? Put a little text block in here, add another one. Says, you know what? I'm going to be putting my own notes in this text box. My computer is waking up and going a little slow on us, but so let me go ahead and take some of that text right there. You might be interested in putting some of your notes that are relevant to you in a block such as this. So what are some important concepts that you learned? Examples from the class that were relevant to you? Questions you may have for following up with Dr. T. You might put those as a block at the beginning. Everything in here is just documentation purposes before we get into the main code itself, the practice of coding. Code would take place in code blocks. Notes and informational elements would take place right here in the text blocks. And that's what we have going. So as I go down this lesson plan, and as you're looking through this lesson plan to get comfortable with this environment, you might even say, you know what, I want to have a reflective text section about how this applies to my career. For instance, the AI in terms of the career connection with Python is an important thing for you to research. How might programming help with your future career? You may want to reflect on that in the text block. And what technology career may interest you might also be good for documentation. And so I'm going to just add two more blocks text before we get into the main code here for you to reflect as it relates to AI in your career. Those elements, why not put a text block here? And I'm going to ask for a final reflection at the end of the activity related to what you learned, what concepts were easiest, what concepts were most challenging, or any other responses that you about what you like to learn next as it relates to Python. Preserve a standard block at the end of all these for keeping track of that. And so let's go ahead and put another text cell there for that reflective purpose. With these elements in place, some kind of overview, some learning reflection, notes that you may have right here in the middle, we can begin having a conversation about Python itself, how it works in terms of the elements that you're going to be learning throughout this class. The key to remember that programming is a concept of input, process, output. Whenever we're ready to display information on screen as it relates to Python, we're going to use that keyword print. When you say print and you say hello world, all right, and we click this little run button, what you're experiencing here is Python thinking behind the scenes. And there you go. There's the output to what we did there. We have displayed information on screen using the print function. That's how we do that work. So input, process, output, input, process, output. We're constantly seeking to work through those elements in programming. So let's add a new line of code here, and you can see the lines are numerical for keeping track of where you are versus where I am. If I want to receive input from the user, for instance, I ask a person for their name, and I say equal input, enter your name. Okay, it's always good to give some indications there, some spaces. And then guess what? You can print that person's name with that comma in between, which will give us a pending. I'm going to put a space bar just out of instinct so that it can kind of put space and then show your name on screen. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to say hello world. All right. And say enter your name, Tyson, Dr. T. Hello, Dr. T. Maybe I was soup soaps. Python's pretty smart. Maybe that comma append operator is good enough to where it knows put a space. So there's an extra space there. So I'm going to run and say Tyson. And it's pretty neat that it knew how to put a nice space, hello, Tyson, in between there. So we practice both input and output in that particular system thereof. There then may become a space where we need to perform calculations. And so the way we do that in Python, put a little pound sign here and say, this is a kind of internal notes, what we call comments. Let's say calculations, process. Okay, what you have here on that line, pound sign is input. Okay. And what we have here is hashtag output. Input, process, output, the coding cycle. So I might want to say hours, let those be equal to 40. Let my rate be equal to 20. And my pay be calculated as hours star rate. And then we want to print that pay on screen, print that pay in terms of what we have on screen itself. So let's run that, test that. Remember, it's going to go from top to bottom. So everything that I wrote in there is running from top to bottom in terms of this particular code block. And so, hello, Tyson, you get $800 a pay because it's 40 times the 20. And so processing, that's calculations, input, process, output, input, process, output. Calculations have been performed there. I'm going to add another code block, and these code blocks can work together and be independent. They can run at the same time. But as we discuss variables, which are holders of information, they store information for later use. You notice that we don't put any spaces in them. You use an underscore in lieu of it. If a student's name was Maria, then we would declare Maria's student name as such. If we wanted to name this course, it's perfectly acceptable to say in the quotation mark portion, string introduction to scripting, perfectly acceptable. To put spaces there. Variable names must be meaningful. They should have no spaces, and be careful with the case sensitivity. There are certain reasons that we capitalize and certain ones that we don't. But in general, we name variables generally with lowercase letters, okay, or underscores to separate in between, just as a Python naming convention. So that's how variables work. Let's do another code block here and talk about when we make decisions in programming. You're going to, in this course, look at what we call if statements to do that. Let's assume that I have a grade and it is set to 85. And if my grade is greater than or equal to 70, I want to perform some operations. Tabs matter in Python tremendously. So I'm going to print, that's a passing grade. Okay. Else, otherwise, colon, we're going to print needs improvement. We got some work to do in that sense. And so let's run that, test that, make sure we have no errors because spacing matters tremendously. So it knew it's a passing grade because that grade is set to 85. Let's set that grade to 67. Uh-oh, 67, 67, look out. We teachers have heard a lot of that. Needs improvement indeed. And so it's dynamic. A decision had to be made and it printed conditionally based upon the value of grade. We had some different input, process, output, some different inputs happening there. So that's what we're looking at in terms of when we make decisions. As we accelerate deeper into the course, get into the middle of the course, you're going to learn about repetition structures when we need to repeat information and when we need to make repeated decisions. We call those loops in programming. And that's when you need to make a repetition. And so let us say, for instance, I is in the range. It's going to go up to 5. Print, that's tab is important. Print, learning Python. I want to repeat that. Looks like that phrase is going to repeat possibly 5 times on screen. For I in range, this is when you have an error. You do need that colon right there. And so Google Colabs is helping me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, learning Python, which printed 5 times on screen with that one statement. It was able to loop multiple times. That's called the for loop. We also have whiles and do while loops in programming. Let's go look at an implementation of a while loop. Watch my spacing very carefully. Notice how I went, decreased my indent and I went out. This is the while loop. And so let a count start at 1. That's the counter. And, okay, be careful with your spacing. I had to bring that spacing out because it wasn't aware. While count is less than or equal to 5, don't forget that colon, in the scope of the while, print the count on screen. Do that for us. And then count, increment it, equals plus equals 1. Add 1 to the count, print it to the screen. Add 1 to the count, print it to the screen. That's what we told the while loop to do there continuously for us. So let's run that, test that, see the effects of our work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the count began at 1 in the while loop scope here. It counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the purposes of this work thereof. Learning Python printed 5 times, printed the while loop there. And so you're going to get more practice with this, but this is just a practical, quick example as it relates to how loops are going to be important in the work that we do here. You're going to learn about data structures in this course. And in data structures, we are looking at lists of information of the same data type. So data structures, just added another text code block there for my notes, but we're going to need a code block to really implement the data structures. And so an array, list of information of the same data type. I have this array here from our example called days. In the days array, I have several string variables, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Each one of those days is represented by that list. If I want to print the first element of that list, days at index 0, at element 0, because we start counting at 0 in programming, this little bitty structure here is smart enough to print Sunday to the screen because it knew. You change that to a 3, the 4th element in the list, so 1, 2, 3, 4, I expect that to say Wednesday. You see that kind of working through. We start counting at 0 as programmers. The more you kind of practice that and understand that, the better, because that's going to help you realize the different ways that we count in terms of programming as well. So look at that through the beauty and the miracle of computing as we run forth. You're going to look at functions in this class, and a function is just a great way of doing some repetition in terms of blocks of code. If I don't want to repeat myself over and over again, if I want to be efficient in my code, programmers use functions to that end. And see that we've been documenting with comments throughout. We call those definitions. If I do a definition called greet, all right, okay, open and close, don't forget that colon. Greet each time is going to print welcome to Python. with Dr. T. It prints that on demand anytime I just simply call greet. I can call it multiple times. Greet. Greet twice, run that, test that. Welcome to Python with Dr. T. Welcome to Python with Dr. T. So functions allow programs to create reusable code that can be used at various efficient elements throughout the course. So remember that as you're working, use comments to document your code. Begin with a pound sign like that. Multiple line comments are possible as well. There's a sequence in Python that you'll learn throughout this course about how to do more than one line. But this is a single line comment documenting our work. Remember that variables should use meaningful names. Use documentation in your program as we've shown throughout this in terms of text blocks, in terms of comments. Test your code frequently. You may not get it right the first time, but that's standard. That happens in coding. Don't let that frustrate you. That's par for the course. Programming, you will take chances, make mistakes, get messy, like Miss Frizzle said. Keep that in mind as you move forward. Start with simple examples, then they can be expanded into more expansive examples. Learn from your mistakes, stay organized, and practice consistency. Throughout this course, we're going to be using this input process, output process to help you learn coding. So this was just a basic introduction to the many, many different elements you're going to need to be successful in this course. Remember this important step here as it relates to my grading, and I'm going to make this a little bit large for that purpose. Make sure that when you get ready to send this to me for grading, that you click the share link here. And when you share, make sure you turn it from restricted to anyone with link. So important. Anyone with link must be able to be a viewer. You're able to copy that link and share it with me for grading purposes. So it's going to be a long, kind of weird looking link, but that's the type of links I'm going to be looking for that are properly shared for grading. If I cannot open it, I cannot grade it. That's not good for your grade. So make sure that indeed that you share a link that is copied with a viewer, anyone with link status. So keep that in mind as we move forward through the miracle of computing. We're going to be doing lots of work in this class. I look forward to working with you. Email me anytime you have a question. And I also sometimes will give you a link that allows you to have a one-on-one appointment with me as well. But throughout this course, I'm there for you. I'll be grading these. No TA is grading this. I'm looking at everything you submit, and it's my great pleasure to do so. So for the time being, signing out for now. Dr. T, looking forward to being with you on this coding journey. Thank you for your kind time and attention, and best of luck working hard throughout this course, putting forth 10,000 hours of practice until we become experts. Thank you for your time. Dr. T, signing out for now.